Hello and welcome to the Mad Leprechaun. My name is Mert Walsh. Welcome to Arnhem and walking in Geoff's footsteps. After the intro, Pete is going to take us on a battlefield tour of Private Geoffrey Morgan's Arnhem and walking in Geoff's footsteps. If that's something that interests you, please do stick around and stay tuned until after the intro. Good morning, Pete.
Good morning, Mert.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, mate, thank you.
So can you try and explain, or would you explain, whereabouts we are?
We are standing on the edge of DZX. So that's drop zone X, basically, which is the drop zone for the first day, 17th, for the Operation Butler Market Garden. And we're standing just outside Wolfhays and Healtham. Two local villages that were just sort of right on the edge of the drop zones, basically.
So how long did it take them to get from Saltby to here?
Apparently they got in the air at about 10:45.
Right.
So 10:45, then you've got the forming up of the various different formations, which of course were flying from airfields all over the UK. As far down as down Ampney and places like that, you know. So there was a vast armada of planes that then had to meet up, and they met up over a place called March in Cambridge.
So I know Marsh in Cambridge.
So they roughly met over there, and then they took two routes to Arnhem. Northerly and the southerly route, and my uncle was on the northerly route, which I think was slightly more direct. The others were sort of like for the US, so that they would come in over Nijmegen and etc. Eindhoven and work up that way. But he took the northerly route, got here for about 2 o'clock. He was in the 2nd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment.
Right.
He was in C Company, and he was in 8th Platoon.
Right. So what was his role? Well, what would he have been doing?
He was a rifleman. I mean, unfortunately, he never spoke about it. So he could have been tasked with a number of things. He could have been a Bren gunner. He could have had a march with a Sten gun, or he could have had a 303 Lee Enfield. I believe he had the 303 Lee Enfield. I think he was just a rifleman, right? A basic. He was a private, so he had no rank. So I think he was basically a basic squaddy, really, as they would refer to them. At about 12 o'clock, there'd already been a flight of Sterlings coming over.
Right.
And they dropped the 21st Independent Pathfinders, who would have marked out the areas. Right. They would have placed smoke canisters. They would have placed what they call the Eureka beacons.
Right.
There was a Eureka and a Rebecca. Forgive me, I get confused as to which way round they go. Right. One's on the ground, one's in the aircraft.
Oh, okay.
And basically, they talk to each other, and they give the pilots their direction to come to get to the drop zones. Right. So they would have marked out the letter of the drop zone. So there would have been a big X. Somewhere down the middle of this field. And there would have been a big what would look like a T, but that would be signifying the wind direction.
Oh, right, okay.
So the guys knew exactly where the wind was coming from, so they didn't know how to expect to land when they came down.
Wow.
So on this side, you might be able to hear this road in the background. This side is drop zone X. And that side is landing zone.
And that is the field
X.
that I can see across.
Absolutely, so that's where the gliders would come in.
Oh, right, okay.
And I believe the Paras landed, and then the gliders came in. I'm not 100% sure. There were Horsers, and there were
the Americans.
You've got
Wankos.
the bigger ones.
Oh no, I don't know the name of them.
So they land on the right hand side here. And then the following day,
that's busy.
It swaps over.
Oh, right, okay.
So the gliders can then land on where the parachutists would have landed.
Clean field.
Clean field, absolutely.
Just
close by here, so if anyone wants to go to the Glider Museum at Wolfhays, fantastic, really, really good museum. The guy there really knows his stuff.
Yeah.
But on one of the centre wing spars, it's stamped Steinway and Co.
No.
Seriously, yeah.
Wow.
So piano manufacturer, German
Brilliant.
piano manufacturers.
Yeah, funnily enough.
At the time.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's a really interesting museum to go to. So that's the glider museum in Wolfhaze. But basically, the gliders would land. If they had a bad landing, then the jeeps were just chained to the floors.
Yeah.
They'd just rip from the floors and go barreling out the front of the front of the aircraft.
So his rendezvous point, you said it's
actually in that direction. There's a golf course in that direction nowadays.
Am I right in thinking that's further away from Arnhem, or is that towards?
It's on the route towards Arnhem.
Right. Yeah.
So Arnhem is in that direction.
Right.
Over there.
And we are about how many miles from the bridge?
We're about 8 miles from the bridge, roughly.
So an awful lot of Bridge Too Far. If anybody's seen the movie Bridge Too Far, some of it is accurate-ish, and then some of it is not.
It's such a confusing battle that it would have been almost impossible to have worked it out on the film.
Right.
And to show how people one minute this territory was British held, then it was German held, then it was British held, then it was German held. You couldn't explain that in a film. It would be just impossible. So it was very convoluted, very it's a tricky battle to get your head round. Part of the confusion will actually show up later,
right,
when we get to an area where my uncle fought.
Yep.
And we'll see why it was confusing then.
Right.
So that will explain some of the confusion.
Yeah. So he's landed.
Yeah.
He's gone to his rendezvous point.
Yeah.
And what's his next step from?
His next step then is because he was in C Company.
Yeah.
They were tasked with capturing the railway bridge. They were supposed to get one platoon to leave. To keep the railway bridge nice and safe.
Yeah.
The rest of the company was supposed to go over the railway and then march down to the road bridge, so they could take the road bridge from both ends.
When we say the road bridge, we're talking about
the bridge at Arnhem,
which is now called
John
Frost Bridge.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to point out at this point, it's not Pegasus Bridge. Pegasus Bridge is in France. John Frost Bridge is in the Netherlands. Both taken by the paratroopers.
Yep.
Two different countries, two different bridges.
So we're now leaving drop zone
X. Yep. And heading towards.
This is actually the route that John Frost took. So this was 2nd Battalion.
Right.
This was also 3rd Battalion's route as well. So it's a little bit confusing. There were 3 routes headed into Arnhem. Lion, Tiger and Leopard.
Yep.
And Lion was John Frost's route, which was the most southerly, closest to the Rhine.
Bottom.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Tiger was the middle route, which should have been 3 para, and that would have been straight down from the drop zone onto the Utrechtsweg, which runs through the middle of Oosterbeek and straight into Arnhem.
Yeah.
And then there's Leopard, which was 1 para, and they should have taken the northerly route, which is on the Ede to Ada to Arnhem Road. And that would have brought them out on the sort of like the northerly end of Arnhem itself. So they would have made the top end, the northerly end of the bridgehead.
Right.
Around the bridge.
Traffic lights.
So 3 para would have turned left here.
Okay.
And that's now the middle route.
Okay.
We're still following the southern. So the idea was that they were going to split the company, and in fact it was going to be less than company size. They were going to have, I think, a platoon remain on the bridge to guard it. They were going to cross over the bridge to the south side, and then approach the Arnhem Road Bridge from the south side, so they could capture the bridge from both ends, as is the best way.
Right. Yes.
But we'll find out a little bit more about the bridge when we get towards it. So that was Dorworth that we've just gone through.
Okay.
And we should be heading up towards a place called Westerbowing. But the Westerbowing Heights were quite an important area. It was really overlooked by Browning, etc. in the plan, because it's quite a bit of high ground, and you can see quite well, or you could see quite well in those days, towards Arnhem, Oosterbeek, etc. We're going to stop there in a moment. So if you look towards the rail bridge,
yep,
you can see a very flat land to the left-hand side. That's the Rosandapolder. So that was where C Company, which was my uncle's company, would have advanced from. On the right-hand side of the bridge, you can just see the edge of the grass. There's a road, yep, and it sort of winds its way along the edge of those trees.
Yep.
There was a building on the right-hand side there that the Germans held. Probably not a huge amount of Germans in there. I think that they said there was probably about 10, 15, something along those lines. And on the left-hand side of the river, you can just see where the trees are. There are a number of little boats in the water. They're probably right against the bank of the river.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, I can see them now. I'm not looking through the camera anymore.
Okay.
There.
So in that area there's a brickworks where the Germans held that. So the C Company had to overcome that first. So the significance of this area, this is the old church at Oosterbeek. It's right on the border of the river, which is just behind us. We'll pan to that in a moment. And this formed the eastern perimeter of what they call the thumb-shaped pocket. So this would be the sort of like the boundaries of where the soldiers would have retreated to this area here, and then there's a line that you'd follow straight up to the main high street in Oosterbeek. And this would also have been the first point where my uncle would have really had a good idea of seeing his objective, which is the rail bridge, which is to Mertz back. We'll follow that route in a moment. But this is where, first of all, John Frost came down to this area with the A, B and C Company. A and B Company went straight ahead, and C Company peeled off to the right to attack the bridge and to hopefully capture that. And they actually had to ask permission from Frost before they could break away from the rest to take their objective. This is the railway bridge. So there were
yep,
3 bridges in total.
Yep.
There was the railway bridge, there was a pontoon bridge, and then there was the road bridge. Yep. So obviously the road bridge is in Arnhem, it's in the town centre of Arnhem.
Yep.
The pontoon bridge was just slightly outside, and then the rail bridge, again, it's right on the outskirts between Oosterbeek and Arnhem itself.
Right.
This is the route that Frost took,
yep,
and it's just up ahead where C Company are going to turn to the right. A and B Company are going to go straight ahead and continue to follow the main route towards Arnhem itself. Like I say, we're just going to turn off to the right and follow Geoff's footsteps. So I believe this is the point where my uncle, who was in 8th Platoon, probably took cover along this. We're standing on top of the small dyke at the moment, which would make a perfect shooting position. They were 8th Platoon were laying in this area here, giving covering fire to 9 Platoon, who were advancing towards the rail bridge, which you can see to the right hand side. 7 Platoon were way back in reserve, and 9 Platoon's job was to go across onto the railway bridge, climb the bridge, and then capture it basically. They'd already spotted Germans on the bridge, which they believe were planting explosives. And as you can see from the film, the bridge is a hell of an open expanse. So 9 platoon ran as much as they could towards the centre of the bridge, but when they got just before that span, which is the first part that goes over the water, they actually stopped and laid down. They followed their commanding officer, who was Lieutenant Peter Barry, and he dropped to the ground so they could get a bit of a breather, bearing in mind they've still got kit on. At which point they then threw grenades, smoke grenades, and just about to start their advance again when the Germans detonated the bridge, and it lifted in their faces and dropped into the river. So Peter Barry's then called a retreat, and at which point he's then injured. He's shot, and I believe it was an arm and a stomach wound that he received. So his comrades dragged him back off the bridge. 8 platoon here would have been giving as much covering fire as they could. So my uncle would have been laying in this area here somewhere, trying to get across trying to fire across the river. And that was it. That was their first objective. Was now gone. It was no more in the battle. So they would have regrouped and discussed their second objective, which was going to be the German headquarters, which we'll head towards in a moment. So there's not a great deal to Geoff's story along this part of the route. This is still the lower road that John Frost had taken. So a lot of the enemy had already been cleared up by them. There was a bit of sporadic sort of sniper fire, that sort of thing going on, and that would delay them very, very slightly. But basically they were almost catching up with the back elements of John Frost's advance in towards Arnhem. Shortly we come to an area where C Company, they would have gone straight on here. We're going to have to go around to the left. So shortly we come to an area where we'll stop and have another little chat about what happened in that particular area.
That's fine.
So we're now joining 3 para.
So this is the middle route?
Yeah.
Right.
But they didn't get this far. Because
Right.
they stopped back there for the night.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And no one really knows why.
Oh, wow. So back down that way.
No one managed to advance past that because there was German fire coming from the high ground in front of us.
Yeah.
So this route was now cut off. You couldn't get any further down this route.
Right.
You often hear of people saying, they got to the open area coming outside of Oosterbeek towards Arnhem, and they got stopped back there. So this zone here was never really trodden on by British feet.
Right.
Fairly soon we come to a set of traffic lights which forms the crossroads of where we meet John Frost's route again, and he was taking the low road and with A Company and B Company, and they were going to be capturing the pontoon bridge and the road bridge. So the rail bridge we know is gone now.
Yeah.
And no chance of taking that. So C Company, we're going to be taking the German Gestapo headquarters, which was on Utrechtstraat. So this is Utrechtsweg at the moment,
Yeah.
but it changes to Utrechtstraat when we get to the crossroads and we start to go uphill.
Okay.
We'll pause in that area because it's a very important area to learn about, really.
Okay. So,
Okay, so C Company would have come out of this road on the right-hand side here, and 8 platoon were in the lead. They were ahead of everybody else. You can just see ahead of us, I know it's a bit difficult with all this traffic, but there's a high road and a low road.
yep.
The advance of C Company itself was to be on the high road, but 8 platoon stayed to the right-hand side and just took the very slightly lower road.
But we can see the lower
We can
road.
see it now. So 8 platoon took the right-hand side of the road and went down the lower road.
Yeah, where the barrier is.
yeah, as C Company was advancing, when they got to around about where the traffic lights are, they spotted a lorry load of Germans unloading. Now you have to think that Frost has already brought A and B Company down this road, so it should be clear. So their first thoughts were, oh, they must be prisoners of war. Then they looked a little bit closer, and these guys were actually forming up into ranks, and they held weapons. So the thoughts were, why are they holding weapons if they're prisoners of war? And then the logical penny drops, and they went, hold tight, they're not prisoners of war, they're armed German soldiers.
Yeah.
So at this point, 9 and 7 platoon have called for Piats and Bren guns, and they've attacked from this direction. 8 platoon have climbed the bank on our right hand side and have attacked from the behind, basically. So they've managed to attack them from the rear. So as we're looking back to towards the crossing now, this is where C Company is advancing from, and we got to that point where we saw the lorry was starting to debus about 80 German soldiers, and that area here is now just to your rear. So 8 platoon themselves were basically on this embankment here and just up here, and so they'd come up behind the Germans who were debussing. So as soon as the rest of the company, so that'd be 9 and 7 platoon, opened fire, 8 platoon would have also opened fire into this group of Germans. It's sad to think of now, but there were about 80 Germans, and by the time they'd finished, there was about 10 of them were in a fit state to do anything. The rest were all taken prisoner or killed. So you've got A and B Company of 2 para are on the lower road. We're on sort of like the higher road, the Utrecht Straat. We're right on the peak of it here. And the other 2 objectives were the pontoon bridge, which you can actually see. You can just work out there's a road bridge. And that road bridge, it's in about the same position as the pontoon bridge was. The problem that my uncle had was this was the street that they were advancing down, and you can see now that we're going to be funneled between 2 lots of houses on each side.
Yep.
It's pitch black, so they can't see anything that's going on ahead of them, and they're just taking it very cautiously. 8 platoon with my uncle are in the right hand side of the road, 9 platoon are to the left and further back, and 7 platoon are in reserve, probably on just to the right, slightly to the right hand side. The lead scouts at this point are William Loney and Norman Shipley, and they're out ahead of 8 platoon in the advance. Like I say, can't see anything, it's pitch black, so they carry on going. What they didn't realise, just at the bend, I think you might just be able to see that number 1 on the bottom there. The Germans had actually crossed the road at that point and were dug in force. And there were at least 3 MG42s that were in that area there, just waiting for the advance of the battalion to get into that area. They didn't actually open fire until the Paras were virtually on top of them. The first guy is Norman Shipley, and the second guy is William Loney. He was known as William Ginger Loney, right mop of ginger hair. So at this point, this is about as far as C Company got. The Germans who were in the buildings just behind us there opened up on the lead scouts and killed both of the lead scouts. 8 platoon took cover in these buildings on the left hand side, whereas 9 platoon and 7 both got over to the right hand side, where they managed to work their way back through on the following day. So what the guys did on this side, they were completely stuck on this side of the road now. They couldn't get back over. What they started to do was to use their ammunition and to blow holes through each building and work their way through. Eventually they got a little further up the road, but of course they're almost out of ammunition now and pretty much stuck. So they decide that from the cellar that they're in, they're going to have to surrender. At which point they get a stick with a white flag on it, stick it up through the grating, which is one of these, and it gets shot to pieces. So a hand grenade comes through the grating, and you may have noticed that this road is on a hillside. In the cellars, the back doors open out to a garden, and luckily one of the guys has the presence of mind to pick up this German hand grenade, throw it out into the back garden where it went off and nobody was injured. And within moments of that, the Germans had kicked in the door and were shouting "Raus, Raus," calling them out, and the guys were then brought out and taken prisoner of war, at which point they were put into a lorry of some sort and taken down to the railway station to be taken to Germany. And that's pretty much my uncle's story.
Hopefully you have enjoyed some of what Pete and I have tried to put together, and if you have made it this far, thanks ever so much for watching, and hopefully I shall see you in another one. Until next time, people, take care of yourself. Bye bye.